Why people hate you when you are kind. This is almost exactly how I would describe the truth I learned through life, experience, and Jewish wisdom. If you have ever wondered why sincerity, honesty, and genuine help sometimes provoke coldness, irritation, or even hostility, this video is for you. Before we go any further, let me tell you this clearly. What you are about to hear is not motivational noise. It is not comforting lies. It is a calm, grounded explanation of human psychology, supported by real-life experience and principles that Jewish wisdom has passed down for generations. At some point in life, many of us experience the same confusion. You help someone sincerely. You invest time, attention, energy. You expect nothing extraordinary, maybe just respect, maybe simple gratitude. Instead, you receive coldness, irritation, suspicion, sometimes even open aggression. And the most painful part is not their reaction. The most painful part is what happens inside you afterward. You start questioning yourself. You replay conversations. You ask yourself whether you crossed a line, whether you were too much, whether your kindness was a mistake. Jewish wisdom taught me something essential very early in life. When people react negatively to your kindness, it is rarely about your actions. Much more often, it is about what your actions awaken inside them. In this video, I will explain calmly and clearly why kindness can provoke hatred, jealousy, or resistance. I will share personal experiences where my good intentions led to unexpected hostility. And most importantly, I will show you how to remain kind without becoming weak, how to protect your inner boundaries, and how to stop taking other people's reactions personally. If you stay until the end, you will not just understand people better, you will feel lighter, freer, stronger, and you will stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours to begin with. Let us begin. Why kindness triggers negative reactions is the first question we must face honestly, without illusions or excuses. Because until you understand this mechanism, you will continue blaming yourself for reactions that were never caused by your intentions, your tone, or your character. Why kindness triggers negative reactions is not a mystery when you look at human psychology without romantic ideas about people. Kindness acts like a mirror. When you are calm, sincere, and generous, you unintentionally reflect what other people try very hard not to see in themselves. For some people, your kindness highlights their insecurity. They suddenly feel smaller next to your calm confidence. For others, it exposes fear. Fear of being inadequate, fear of depending on someone, fear of admitting that they are not as strong as they pretend to be. And for many, it awakens envy. Not envy of your actions, but envy of your inner stability and emotional independence. Jewish wisdom explains this with a simple but powerful idea. Light does not create darkness. Light only reveals what already exists. When a person reacts with irritation, coldness, or hostility to your goodness, it often means your presence forces them to face something unresolved inside themselves. This is why kindness is not always received as kindness. It is filtered through pride, fear, shame, and unresolved inner conflict. If a person's inner world is calm, your kindness feels warm and supportive. If their inner world is chaotic, your kindness feels threatening, intrusive, or humiliating. I have seen this many times in my own life. When you help someone who secretly doubts their own strength, your help can feel like proof of their weakness. When you support someone who wants to appear independent and self-sufficient, your support can feel like an attack on their identity. This creates an inner conflict for them. On the surface, they know you are doing something good, but internally they feel exposed. And instead of dealing with that discomfort honestly, many people project it outward. They criticize you. They distance themselves, they become cold, or they become aggressive. This projection is a psychological defense. It protects their ego from admitting vulnerability, and unfortunately, you become the target, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something real. Understanding this changes everything. Because once you realize that negative reactions are often reflections rather than judgments of you, you stop internalizing other people's discomfort. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for your nature. You stop confusing kindness with weakness. Jewish wisdom never taught blind kindness. It taught conscious kindness, kindness paired with awareness, kindness that understands human nature instead of denying it. And this is the foundation for everything that follows. Because until you understand why kindness triggers resistance, You will either harden your heart or continue hurting yourself, trying to please people who were never ready to receive what you offered. In the next part, I will share personal experiences where my kindness was met not with gratitude, but with resistance and hostility, and what those moments taught me about strength, boundaries, and self-respect. When kindness turns into resistance is not a theory for me. It is something I lived through more than once, and this part matters, because abstract ideas only become real when you see how they unfold in ordinary life. When kindness turns into resistance, it usually happens quietly at first. Not with open hostility, not with shouting, but with subtle tension, shorter answers, irritation where there was none before, a shift in tone that you feel, even if nothing obvious has been said. I remember helping a young man with his studies several years ago. He was intelligent, capable, but lost. He did not know how to structure his thinking or move forward consistently. I spent evenings explaining complex ideas, breaking things down, guiding him step by step. I believed I was doing the right thing. At first, he listened. Then something changed. He became defensive. He started questioning my intentions. One day, he said something that stayed with me. "You interfere too much. You always think you are right. I want to decide for myself." I was confused. I was not controlling him. I was offering clarity. But that clarity made him uncomfortable, because accepting help would mean admitting confusion, and his pride was not ready for that. This was my first clear lesson. Kindness can feel like pressure to someone who is afraid of their own uncertainty. Your calm guidance can feel like dominance to someone who equates independence with worth. Later, I experienced the same pattern at work. In my early career, I tried to be helpful to everyone, colleagues, managers, people above and below me. I shared ideas openly. I supported others' projects. I spoke honestly when something could be improved. Instead of appreciation, I noticed distance. One colleague stopped talking to me. Others whispered when I entered the room. Criticism appeared where cooperation used to be. At first, I blamed myself. I wondered if I was too direct, too present, too involved. But with time and reflection, I understood something uncomfortable but true. Not everyone wants clarity. Not everyone wants honesty. And not everyone is comfortable around someone who gives without needing approval. Jewish wisdom speaks clearly about this. Some people fear light not because it burns them, but because it reveals what they try to hide from themselves. When your behavior exposes inconsistency, insecurity, or lack of direction, resistance becomes a defense. Another experience made this even clearer. I helped a friend develop his business. He asked for advice, strategy, perspective. I shared what I knew, not to control him, but to support him. Over time, his attitude shifted. Small, sarcastic comments, irritation over details, arguments over things that did not matter. At first, I took it personally. Then I saw the pattern again. Accepting my help meant accepting that he was not fully ready on his own. And that realization was painful for him, so he resisted me instead of confronting himself. This is a hard truth to accept. Sometimes people do not reject your kindness because it is wrong. They reject it because it threatens the image they have built of themselves. And here is the most important insight from these experiences. When kindness turns into resistance, it is often a sign that you are touching something real, something sensitive, something unresolved. Understanding this protects you. Because without this understanding, you either harden your heart or break your self-respect, trying to prove your good intentions. In the next part, I will explain the principle that changed everything for me, why other people's reactions are not a measure of your value, and how separating these two ideas gives you emotional freedom. Why their reaction is not a measure of your value is the principle that finally brought me emotional clarity. Until I understood this deeply, I kept carrying unnecessary weight. I kept analyzing faces, tones, pauses, and silences. I kept asking myself whether I was too much or not enough. Why their reaction is not a measure of your value becomes obvious only when you separate two things that most people confuse: your intention and their perception. These are not the same, and they never were. Jewish wisdom teaches that a person can only respond from the level of awareness they currently inhabit. People do not meet you as you are. They meet you as they are, through their fears, through their pride, through their unresolved wounds. When someone reacts negatively to your kindness, your mind immediately looks inward. You ask yourself what you did wrong, But most of the time, the question itself is misplaced. Because the reaction you receive is shaped far more by their inner world than by your actions. I learned this through painful repetition. I noticed a pattern. The more grounded and calm I became, the more uncomfortable certain people felt around me. Not because I was arrogant or distant, but because my stability highlighted their instability. Some people need chaos to feel normal. Some need conflict to feel alive. And when you show up without those things, when you offer help without drama, it creates a quiet tension they do not know how to process. This is where many kind people lose themselves. They start adjusting, softening, explaining, apologizing for things that never required an apology. They try to manage emotions that were never theirs to manage. This is a mistake. Your value does not rise when people approve of you, and it does not fall when they reject you. Approval and rejection are emotional reactions, not objective measurements. I had to learn this the hard way. There were moments when I gave my time, energy, and experience sincerely, only to be met with suspicion or resentment. In the past, this would have shaken me. I would replay conversations and wonder where I failed. But once I understood this principle, something shifted. I stopped chasing clarity where none was possible. I stopped demanding fairness from people who were not emotionally available. Jewish wisdom emphasizes responsibility, but not self-blame. You are responsible for your actions, your intentions, and your boundaries. You are not responsible for how others process their discomfort. When you truly accept this, your kindness becomes lighter, cleaner, free of expectation. And paradoxically, this is when it becomes strongest. You no longer give in order to be understood. You give because it aligns with who you are, and if someone reacts poorly, you see it as information, not a verdict. This distinction protects your inner dignity. It allows you to remain open without becoming exposed, kind without becoming weak. In the next part, we will move from understanding to practice. I will explain how to build inner boundaries that allow you to stay kind while protecting your energy and self-respect. How to stay kind without losing yourself is the question that separates conscious kindness from self-destruction. Because kindness without boundaries does not make you noble, it makes you exhausted. How to stay kind without losing yourself begins with a clear understanding. Being kind does not mean being available to everyone. It does not mean absorbing other people's emotions. And it certainly does not mean sacrificing your inner stability to maintain harmony. Jewish wisdom never glorified self-sacrifice without awareness. It emphasized balance, giving paired with responsibility, compassion paired with clarity. For a long time, I believed that being kind meant enduring discomfort silently. I thought patience meant tolerating disrespect. I thought generosity meant always saying yes. And this belief slowly drained me. I remember a situation at work where a colleague constantly asked for help. At first, I supported him willingly. I explained processes. I reviewed his work. I corrected mistakes. But over time, I noticed a pattern. The requests increased. Responsibility decreased. Respect disappeared. I felt irritation growing inside me. And that irritation was not a flaw, it was information. Boundaries are not walls, they are signals. They tell you when your kindness is being transformed into obligation, when support turns into dependency. The moment I calmly said, "I can guide you, but you must take responsibility for your work," everything changed. There was resistance at first, mild hostility, disappointment. But eventually, respect returned. This taught me something essential. People often test your limits unconsciously, not to harm you but to locate themselves in relation to you. If you have no boundaries, they feel unstable. If you have clear boundaries, they adjust. Staying kind while protecting yourself requires internal permission to disappoint others. This is difficult for people who associate kindness with approval. But approval is not kindness. It is dependency. When you say no calmly and without anger, you are not rejecting the person. You are protecting the relationship from resentment. Jewish wisdom teaches that true giving must leave both sides dignified. If your kindness humiliates you or exhausts you, it has already crossed a line. Practical awareness matters here. Watch your body. Irritation, tension, and fatigue are not weaknesses. They are signals that your boundaries need adjustment. You can remain warm without being porous. You can be generous without being consumed. And when you learn this balance, your kindness becomes sustainable. In the next part, we will address one of the hardest lessons of all: why expecting gratitude quietly destroys kindness. and how letting go of this expectation changes everything. Why expecting gratitude destroys kindness is a lesson that sounds simple, but takes years to truly accept. Because on the surface, gratitude feels natural, human, fair. If I help you, appreciation should follow. And yet, this expectation quietly poisons even the purest intentions. Why expecting gratitude destroys kindness becomes clear when you observe what happens inside you the moment appreciation does not arrive. You start feeling tension, disappointment, doubt. You replay your actions and question their value. At that point, kindness stops being free. It becomes transactional, not outwardly but internally. Jewish wisdom speaks about intention before action. When the intention becomes tied to recognition, the action loses its spiritual clarity. You may still help, but something inside you tightens. I learned this through experience. I help people sincerely, investing time and energy, only to be met with silence or irritation. At first, I told myself I did not care, but internally, I noticed frustration growing. That frustration was a sign. Not that I should stop being kind, but that I was secretly asking for something in return. This realization was uncomfortable, because it challenged the image I had of myself. But it was also liberating. When you expect gratitude, you give other people power over your emotional state. Their response begins to determine whether you feel good or depleted, and here is the truth. Many people are not emotionally capable of gratitude in the moment they receive help. Some feel shame, others feel threatened, others are simply overwhelmed. If your kindness depends on their readiness, it will always be unstable. The shift happens when you change the internal source of reward. You help because it aligns with who you are, not because you need confirmation that you are good. I remember helping someone restore important documents after a loss. The process was slow and stressful. Instead of appreciation, I heard complaints. In the past, this would have hurt me deeply, but by then, I had learned something essential. My action was complete the moment I chose to help. Everything that followed belonged to them. When you release the expectation of gratitude, kindness becomes lighter. You stop waiting, you stop measuring, you stop keeping emotional accounts. And paradoxically, this is when gratitude sometimes appears naturally. But even if it does not, you remain whole. In the next part, we will go even deeper. How to separate your actions from other people's reactions, and why this separation is the key to emotional freedom. How to separate your actions from other people's reactions is the skill that finally gives you emotional freedom. Without this separation, even the strongest person slowly becomes reactive, tense, and internally dependent on approval. How to separate your actions from other people's reactions starts with a simple but uncomfortable truth. You control what you do. You do not control how it is received. The moment you try to control both, you lose peace. For many years, I did not understand this fully. I believed that if my intentions were pure enough, people would respond appropriately. Life proved otherwise. I remember helping a neighbor with a long and exhausting renovation. I gave my time freely. I worked carefully. And yet, instead of appreciation, I heard constant complaints, small remarks, criticism over details that did not matter. At first, irritation rose inside me. Then I noticed something important. His reaction had nothing to do with my effort. It was an expression of his stress, his anxiety, his inability to tolerate imperfection. The moment I separated my action from his reaction, everything changed. I continued helping calmly, not to please him, not to correct his mood, but because I had already chosen to help. This separation protects your nervous system. When you tie your inner state to other people's emotions, you live in constant tension. When you untie them, you regain control. Jewish wisdom emphasizes this distinction clearly. You are judged by your actions, not by outcomes beyond your control. Responsibility ends where influence ends. Many kind people exhaust themselves trying to manage emotional outcomes. They adjust their tone, they soften words, they over-explain, all in the hope of receiving a different reaction. But reactions are not rewards, they are expressions of someone else's inner world. A practical principle helped me greatly. After every act of kindness, I ask myself one question. Did I act honestly, consciously, and within my boundaries? If the answer is yes, the action is complete. Everything that follows belongs to the other person. This mindset changes how you experience criticism. Instead of collapsing inward, you observe. Instead of defending, you reflect. Instead of reacting emotionally, you remain grounded. It does not make you cold, it makes you stable. And stability is what allows kindness to last. In the next part, we will talk about one of the hardest lessons of maturity. Why you must stop trying to change everyone around you, and how accepting this brings unexpected peace. Why you must stop trying to change everyone is one of the most difficult lessons for people who are naturally kind, thoughtful, and reflective. Because if you care, you want others to grow. You want them to understand. You want them to see what you see. Why you must stop trying to change everyone becomes clear when you honestly measure the cost. The cost is not time, it is energy, emotional energy, attention, inner peace. For a long time, I believed that patience and explanation could reach anyone. If I just found the right words, the right example, the right moment, people would change. Sometimes they did. Most of the time, they did not. I remember helping a person who constantly complained about his work environment. He blamed colleagues, he blamed management, he blamed circumstances. I offered perspective, tools, ways to shift his position. He listened, he nodded, and nothing changed. Over time, I realized something essential. Change requires readiness, and readiness cannot be forced. Jewish wisdom teaches that free will is sacred. You can offer insight, but you cannot replace someone's inner decision. When you try, you violate not only their autonomy, but your own balance. Many people are not resisting your help, they are protecting their identity. Because changing would mean admitting responsibility, and responsibility is heavy. When you try to change such people, one of two things happens. Either they resist you and grow resentful, or you exhaust yourself trying to carry weight that was never yours. Neither outcome leads to good. Letting go does not mean becoming indifferent. It means becoming wise. It means choosing where your energy can actually create movement. I learned to ask a simple question before investing deeply. Is this person open, or are they only venting? Are they curious, or are they attached to their suffering? This question alone saved me years of emotional labor. When you stop trying to change everyone, something surprising happens. Your presence becomes lighter. Your kindness becomes cleaner. And people who are truly ready begin to find you. Those who are not ready fall away naturally, without conflict, without drama. This is not loss, it is alignment. In the final part, I will bring everything together. We will integrate these principles into a clear inner posture that allows you to remain kind, strong, and free, without shrinking or hardening. How to stay kind, strong, and free is the final question that brings everything together. Because understanding without integration changes nothing. Wisdom only matters when it becomes a way of being. How to stay kind, strong, and free begins with accepting a simple truth. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength with awareness. And strength without awareness always turns into hardness. Over the years, through experience and through Jewish wisdom, I learned that true inner power looks quiet. It does not argue. It does not chase approval. It does not need to be understood by everyone. When you apply everything we discussed, something fundamental shifts inside you. You stop trying to be liked. You stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop measuring your worth through reactions you cannot control. You remain kind. But your kindness is no longer naive. It is grounded. You keep your boundaries. You do not wait for gratitude. You separate your actions from other people's reactions. You stop trying to change those who are not ready. And something unexpected happens. You feel lighter, calmer, more centered. People may still react negatively to your kindness. That does not disappear. But it no longer destabilizes you. Because now you understand what it really is. Jewish wisdom teaches that a person must walk their own path with dignity, not shrinking to be accepted, not hardening to be respected, but standing firmly in who they are. When you live this way, you do not lose kindness, you refine it. You become selective, not closed, present, not available, generous, not drained. This is how kindness becomes sustainable. This is how strength becomes calm. And this is how freedom becomes real. If this message resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in these experiences, I invite you to stay with this channel. Subscribe, because here we speak honestly about human nature, inner strength, and wisdom that helps in real life. Write in the comments what part of this message felt most true to you. Was it boundaries, letting go of gratitude, or realizing that other people's reactions were never a measure of your value? And remember this: your kindness is your strength, Your clarity is your protection, and your inner light does not need permission to exist. Thank you for staying until the end.